I invite you to stand for the gospel. While he was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader of the synagogue came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread throughout that district. The word of the Lord. Good morning. I'd like to share with you this morning from our gathering trip we took this summer, and thank you all for sending us there to Houston. God was present in our trip over and over again in unexpected ways. I'd also like to share the theme, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not by your own doing, but this is a gift of God." Ephesians 2:8. This theme was evident over and over throughout the gathering. Grace was a big topic for us. The logo this year, you can see, was a cross and pieces coming together from a mosaic. The idea that as a church we are all imperfect and incomplete, yet we each belong and are an important piece of God's masterpiece. The cross at the center of the logo is the focus. It's God's grace through Christ's life, death, and resurrection that changes everything for all people. We would now like to share with you a theme for each day, and we're going to have some of the kids get up and they'll each share from our day.
Wednesday, day 1. The theme of the day was God's call changes everything. The biblical text was from Exodus 3, verses 1 through 12, the story of Moses at the burning bush, the beginning of our experience in Houston. The night before, half of our group attended an Astros game and the other half checked out the Galleria. Then Wednesday morning, one group visited the Houston Health Museum and the other half went to the Galleria. At the Health Museum, there were various experiments and activities related to biorhythms and physical fitness. After our morning outings, both groups met up at the NRG for activities, food, and the mass gathering. That night, we could relate to the Exodus of Egypt. We were met with long food lines, intense humidity and heat, and crowds of people, 30,000 people to be more specific. After 2 hours of waiting outside, we finally made our way inside the stadium. Bishop Eaton brought us words of encouragement that the ELCA is a place to belong and everyone is welcome. Other speakers told of how they came to follow their calling, often during difficult journeys. Most importantly, called to serve their neighbor and share the good news of the Lord.
Thursday, day 2. The theme of the day was God loves changes everything. The biblical text was from John chapter 4, verses 7 through 15. The story from the woman at the well. It was our service day. We were ready to go by 7 a.m. to an unannounced location and share God's love with the city of Houston. We eventually found out that we were assigned to a senior center in Houston's 3rd Ward, the Golden Age Hobby House. The senior center was closed for the week, and our job was to paint and do landscaping around the front of the building. We were assigned to the project with 2 other churches from our synod. It was clear from the side of the place that a lot of seniors counted on this place, but the building itself did not get a lot of love or attention. We put extra kids to work cleaning the windows, and sweeping and dusting behind the TV and entertainment center. Many kids make light work certainly held true for this job. At times, we were elbow to elbow working in the house. After 2 hours of work, our 50-some volunteers had completed all the landscaping, painting, and window washing. There was a different look to the place. I'm sure that next Monday morning, when the neighborhood seniors walked in, their spirits would be uplifted by the refreshing appearance to the place. More light coming through the windows, fresh mulch, no more leaves, and a brighter appearance on the inside. Our service day ended with lunch at a nearby park and speeches from local community members. That night at Mass Gathering, we heard from speakers who spoke about God's love. His love comes out of the ashes. God's love can work through us and flow to others by the things we do. The most important part that we are to remember is that God loves us even when others don't.
Friday, day 3. The theme for the day was God's grace changes everything. The biblical text was from Acts 8, verses 26 through 39, the story of Philip and him baptizing the Ethiopian eunuch. This was also our day for interactive learning. Interactive learning was set up in the NRG Center. Interactive learning was a holy playground of sorts, a place where groups could participate in a variety of learning opportunities, support missions, face various challenges such as ropes courses, and group games. That night at Mass Gathering, speakers spoke of grace. Grace is a God-given gift. It is bigger than us and works through us by giving back and making us leaders. Grace is even there for us when we are wrestling with our faith and feel unworthy. God pulls us close and drenches us in grace wherever we might be excluded. There is no limit to His grace, and it is for everyone.
To add a little bit about what Grace just spoke on, on Friday, our 4th day in Houston, we had the opportunity to explore interactive learning activities at NRG Center. And there were 7 tracks that the youth were encouraged to read about and research what they were passionate about and what they wanted to be involved in. And each of the adult leaders were assigned a group of students to take with them. And I believe I had Megan, I did have Megan and Grace and Ivy and Karina with me. And we started our morning, I believe it was at the bumper cars. We walked through, they had a painting set up of a mural of the theme for the day, and we really wanted to participate in that because it was a giant wall mural, and they were piecing it together to be used at the worship service on Sunday. And so they could only allow so many students to paint at a time. So we went through the interactive part and then came back later, and we were able to paint by numbers, and it was a pretty neat experience to watch all the people working together from all over the United States, all these youth painting in different sections. We did go to the movement track, which there were bumper cars there, and we each sat in a little car, and it was rubberized, like with an inner tube around it, and we got to pedal the bumper cars, and that was a lot of fun, actually. We were laughing. There was a lot of laughter shared there because we were bumping into each other, having a good time with several other people that we didn't even know, but everybody was enjoying it. So that was a lot of fun. We did the prayer sand, where we filled a large jar full of colored sand, layers of sand, and every time they poured, they were praying, adding another prayer to the jar, and then they were going to have that at the service as well on Sunday. We did a prayer labyrinth, which I watched several people walk through, and wonderfully enough, a woman who was leading that activity came over and spoke to me about what it was and explained it, so I decided to try it. I took my shoes off and walked through this labyrinth. It was a very complex circle, like a maze, and as you are walking through, you just pray and spend a lot of time in silence, and it was complete silence. And the girls had been coloring at a table, and before I knew it, I looked over and I saw the rest of them walking through. So it was kind of cool to see that we all walked through this labyrinth, and when you reached the center, you just kind of stopped and did a moment of reflection and prayer, and then you kind of walked back through again, completely silent. That was a pretty moving experience for me. And then after we did a bracelet where we had to go in and answer several questions, and we did a string of beads according to how we felt about our own involvement in the church. And so there were a lot of different activities that were available the night before we got the chance to walk through and check out what was available. And we actually made ABC blankets and number blankets for children, and they were going to be sent to Africa for children in Africa to be able to learn their letters and numbers. And that is where Grace and I sat down at a sewing machine. It was her first experience using a sewing machine, and we actually sewed a backpack, and that too was going to be sent. There were several of them hanging on the walls that were going to be delivered to students in Africa to be able to use for their school year. So God's grace was definitely present in all the activities that we participated in. Thank you.
Saturday, day 4. The theme was God's hope changes everything. The biblical text for the day was Luke 24, verses 13 to 35, the walk to Emmaus. It was also our Synod Day. The Synod Day was worship day for your local synod. We also met 600 others from Northwest Ohio in a ballroom. We participated in games, praises, prayers, and Bishop Daniel gave the sermon. That night, message at the mass gathering included messages that revolved around hope for safe schools, an end to racism, end to violence, clean water around the world, an end to hunger. Our faith can help us find hope, meet new people where they are at. It can give us hope from addictions, hope that we are enough.
And then came Sunday morning. Let me tell you, I thought this was going to be a never-ending trip. Sunday morning, we woke up to discover that our first flight had been delayed, and it would cause us to miss our connecting flight home in DC. After a long morning with Dave Schaub from St. John's on the phone, probably for 4 hours, maybe 4.5 or 5 hours, trying to find us flights home. They ended up splitting us into groups of 10, and then the other 15 were left not knowing what we were facing, but probably some type of layover in DC. They would do what they could to get us home, so we left early for the airport in hopes of getting better news when we got there. Another 2 hours later, and a small miracle, which really felt like a large one at the time, they got us a direct flight home to Cleveland that night, and we would arrive 5 minutes later than the first group that had left early that morning. But as it would turn out, God was working for us, and we beat them home, and due to delays, they showed up an hour and a half later. But there we were, all 25 of us took several different roads, and we were never so happy to be on that bus home, all together after a long week. As far as the gathering goes, I would like to share some numbers from the gathering. In Houston, there were a total of 32,242 participants in the gathering. Of those people, 22,500 of them were youth, high school youth being touched by God. 7,500 of them were adult leaders, and 1,200 of them were team members and volunteers that helped put the gathering on. Of those volunteers, 350 of them were young adults sharing their love of God with the other high school students. Service learning in Houston included 213 unique projects across 147 organizations. 40,000 books were collected and distributed at 35 book fairs to Houston students. We created 12 pieces of public art. We worked on 44 homes affected by Hurricane Harvey. We cleaned out 6 historic cemeteries, canvassed 6,500 residents, informing them of city resources, created or worked on 42 community school gardens, built 18 benches and picnic tables. The service in Houston covered a 74-mile distance between the farthest 2 points. Way to go, youth. That was awesome. And finally, gifts given at the donation. 437 people donated hair. 1,248 units of blood were collected. 200 grace bags and 100 Kindness Project rocks were made at Table, a group for disabled kids who met before the gathering. And $260,000 was raised for ELCA World Hunger's Global Farm Challenge. Finally, I would like to leave you with my favorite quote from the gathering. There's grace for that. This is from the Reverend Will Starkweather. When you are broken, when you don't understand, when something challenges you, and when there are things that scare you, there's grace for that. We are all recovering from something, and whatever you are carrying with you, there's grace for that. Thank you very much.